Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Renuka and with me is Saira Mushtaba bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. 2 Indian peacekeepers killed in the Democratic Republic of Congo. External Affairs Minister expresses grief. Russia decides to quit International Space Station after 2024. Kargil Vijay Diwas being celebrated across India. Government of India amends Foreign Contribution Regulation Rules 2022. Bars any person receiving foreign contribution more than 1 million rupees in a financial year. India designates 5 new wetlands as Ramsar sites. Neeraj Chopra to miss the Commonwealth Games due to injury. And in cricket, India to take on West Indies in third and final ODI at Queen's Park Oval in Port of Spain on Wednesday. And now the news in details. External Affairs Minister of India Dr. Jaishankar has expressed deep grief at the loss of 2 Indian peacekeepers in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The BSF peacekeepers were part of MONUSCO, which is the UN mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo. At least 5 people were killed and about 50 injured during anti-UN protests in the eastern city of Goma on Tuesday. Dr. Jaishankar tweeted that the perpetrators of these outrageous attacks must be held accountable and brought to justice. The Congo government spokesman in a tweet, Muyaya, said that security forces had fired warning shots at protesters in Goma to stop attacks on UN personnel. The statement said that hundreds of people blocked roads and chanted hostile slogans before storming the UN peacekeeping mission's headquarters and a logistical base on Monday. Protesters smashed windows and looted valuables while helicopters airlifted UN staff from the premises and security forces fired tear gas in a bid to push them back. The unrest in Goma continued on Tuesday with the fatal shooting of a man near the logistical base. The MONUSCO is one of the world's biggest peacekeeping operations, but it has regularly come under criticism in the country's troubled east for its perceived inability to stem decades-long bloodshed. The United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has strongly condemned the execution of 4 political activists by the Myanmar military last weekend. In a statement released by the UN, the Secretary-General offered his condolences to the families of the executed political activists. The statement said that the executions, which are the first since 1988 in Myanmar, mark a further deterioration of the already dire human rights environment in Myanmar. The Secretary-General reiterated his call for the immediate release of all arbitrarily detained prisoners, including President Win Myint and State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi. The ASEAN Chairman Prime Minister of Cambodia also issued a statement saying that ASEAN is extremely troubled and deeply saddened by the execution of 4 opposition activists. The ASEAN chairman said that it is a setback to the implementation of the 5-point consensus reached earlier to resolve the crisis in Myanmar. Elsewhere, Japan released a joint statement on the Myanmar military regime's executions of opposition leaders together with the High Representative on behalf of the European Union and the foreign ministers of Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Norway, Republic of Korea, the United Kingdom and the United States. On the 25th of July, Myanmar state media reported that the military had executed 4 people. It included former National League for Democracy lawmaker Phyo Zae-thaw and democracy activist Kyaw Min Yu, popularly known as Ko Jimmy, who were executed under counter-terrorism law. Lam Yaw Ong and Ong Thurawzo were the other 2 men executed on murder charges.
External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Arindam Bagchi has said India firmly and consistently opposes projects in the so-called China-Pakistan Economic Corridor or CPEC, which are in the Indian territory illegally occupied by Pakistan. In response to media queries regarding the participation of third countries in CPEC projects, Mr. Bagchi said any such actions by any party directly infringes on India's sovereignty and territorial integrity. He said such activities are inherently illegal, illegitimate and unacceptable and will be treated accordingly by India. Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping has congratulated President Draupadi Murmu on assuming office. In his message, the Chinese president said he is ready to work with her to enhance political mutual trust, deepen practical cooperation, properly handle differences, and push China-India relations forward on the right track. President Xi said that he attaches great importance to India-China relations. Mr. Xi pointed out that China and India are important neighbors of each other. He noted that sound and stable China-India relations serve the fundamental interests of the two countries and peoples and are also conducive to peace, stability and development of the region and the world.
The United Nations Women's Agency representative in Afghanistan, Alison Davidian, said on Monday that the rollback on women's rights in the country is an alarm bell to the world. Deputy Country Representative for UN Women in Afghanistan, Alison Davidian, spoke to reporters at UN headquarters in New York via a video link from Kabul. Her remarks come as more than 20 countries and international organizations meet with Taliban officials in the Uzbek capital of Tashkent. The Taliban are preparing to mark a year since they seized power after Ashraf Ghani's government collapsed and he fled the country last August. Since coming to power, the group has reneged on pledges not to restrict women's rights, increasingly cracking down on how they dress, on their ability to hold jobs outside the home, get an education, move freely, or participate in political life. In Tunisia, voters turned out in low numbers on Monday for a controversial referendum on new constitution. According to the country's Electoral Commission, ballots were cast by 27.5% of eligible voters. However, the opposition alleged that it would entrench the power seized by President Kais Saied a year ago and strengthen his personal rule. According to one exit poll published last evening, the president's measure received the support of over 90% of those who turned out to vote, according to media reports. The date of the referendum was chosen by President Saied to mark a year to the day since his dramatic move to suspend the parliament and dismiss the government. Since then, he has effectively ruled by decree. The new constitution, which replaces one drafted in 2014, 3 years after the Arab Spring, would give the head of state full executive control, the supreme command of the army, and the ability to appoint a government without parliamentary approval. Tunisia became the birthplace of the Arab Spring when it overthrew its long-serving ruler Zine El Abidine Ben Ali in 2011.
Russia has decided to quit the International Space Station after 2024. Moscow Space Agency Roscosmos's newly appointed chief, Yuri Borisov, announced the decision on Tuesday. President Putin was also briefed on the matter. The announcement comes as tensions rage between the Kremlin and the West over Moscow's military operation in Ukraine and several rounds of unprecedented sanctions against Russia. Russia and the United States have worked side by side on the space station, which has been in orbit since 1998. Yuri Borisov also told Mr. Putin that in spite of this decision, the space program will continue to get top priority and Russia will start putting together a Russian orbital station before 2024. Sending the first man into space in 1961 and launching the first satellite 4 years earlier are among key accomplishments of the Soviet space program and remain a major source of national pride in Russia. 3 Chinese astronauts aboard the country's under-construction space station Tiangong successfully entered the Wenxian lab module in orbit for the first time on Monday, according to the China Manned Space Agency. China launched its space laboratory called Wenxian on Sunday, sending the country's largest ever spacecraft into Earth's orbit to become part of the under-construction space station. The Wenxian module consists of a work cabin, an airlock cabin, and a resource cabin. The construction of China's Tiangong space station is expected to be completed this year. State media reported it is the first time in Chinese space history that Wenxian, a 20-ton level spacecraft, conducted space rendezvous and docking during the astronauts' in-orbit stay in the space station. It was the first time the Chinese astronauts had entered the lab module in orbit.
External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met U.S. Aid Administrator Samantha Power in New Delhi on Tuesday. They discussed global development prospects in the context of food, energy, and debt challenges. Both also exchanged views on further expanding the India-US partnership. The 26th of July is celebrated as Kargil Vijay Diwas every year. The day commemorates the 23rd anniversary of India's historic victory in 1999. On the day, tribute is paid to paying tributaries to the bravehearts who prevented an attempted infiltration with the backing of the Pakistani army from the high outposts in the Kargil sector.
In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a special program on the occasion of Kargil Vijay Diwas.
Today, the 26th of July, marks the 23rd anniversary of Kargil Vijay Diwas, which has been celebrated across the country. The nation remembered its war heroes and paid tributes to the martyrs on Kargil Vijay Diwas. The day marks the victory of the Indian Armed Forces in Operation Vijay in 1999, when they evicted the infiltrators backed by the Pakistani army from high outposts in the Kargil sector. On the occasion of Kargil Vijay Diwas, President Draupadi Murmu today bowed to all the brave soldiers who laid down their lives to protect the country. In a tweet, Ms. Murmu said, Kargil Vijay Diwas is a symbol of extraordinary valor and determination of the armed forces. She said, all the countrymen will always be indebted to armed forces and his family members. On Kargil Vijay Diwas, Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu paid tributes to valiant soldiers who displayed unwavering patriotism and unmatched gallantry in protecting the nation in 1999. Mr. Naidu said the nation is ever indebted to the martyrs of Kargil for the supreme sacrifice. The Prime Minister Narendra Modi saluted all the brave sons of the country who have accomplished their valor in the defense of the motherland. He said Kargil Vijay Diwas is a symbol of pride of Ma Bharati. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh said India salutes the bravery, courage and sacrifice of the armed forces. He said they fought valiantly in extreme harsh conditions to defend our motherland. Mr. Singh said their act of valor and indomitable spirit will remain etched forever as a defining moment in India's history. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh also paid tribute to the fallen soldiers who fought valiantly during Kargil War at National War Memorial in New Delhi in the morning. The three service chiefs, Army Chief General Manoj Pandey, Navy Chief Admiral R. Hari Kumar and Air Force Chief Air Chief Marshal V.R. Chaudhary also paid tributes at National War Memorial. In the spring of 1999, the world slowly became aware of Pakistan's foray into the Kargil Daraz sector of the disputed state of Jammu and Kashmir, a provocation that would incite the limited war now known as the Kargil conflict. High in the mountains of the Indian-controlled Kashmir, India and Pakistan fought in an intense border clash for limited but important stakes. The Kargil War ensued for 74 days at a cost of more than 1,000 casualties on each side. It is a milestone event in Indian military history and one that represents a telling prototype of India's most likely type of future combat challenge. Major General Sameer Kumar Chakravarti, former GOC General Officer Commanding of the 28th Infantry Division of the Indian Army, during the Kargil War in 1999, he commanded 18 Garhwal Rifles, which received the Chief of the Army Staff's instant citation, Battle Honour Daraz, and Theatre Honour Kargil for feats of gallant action during the Kargil War, tells us about the challenges faced by the Jawans.
At that time, there were a lot of challenges. Firstly, I told you about acclimatization. Thereafter, the administrative backup, snow clothing, rations, because it was not stocked for so many troops. But these impediments did not stop anything. They started coming and gradually everyone got his share and the boys were happy in carrying out the task. When I was inducted, I told the GOC that I want 6 days of acclimatization. We went into Matian, he dropped in a scepter. I told him, sir, we are coming ground level and we will buy casualties for nothing. But he willingly agreed and gave us 6 days. So we started operation after those 6 days of acclimatization. But most of them who went ahead of us, that is 18 Grenadiers, 8 Sikh, 1 Naga, they went straight into battle. And the ones who came after our battalion also got some time. But it is imperative that acclimatization be carried out to avoid casualties that are weather casualties.
It is a sheer grit and determination of the brave soldiers who pledged their lives in winning the battle to fly high the Indian flag or come home wrapped in it. General Bipin Rawat, Chief of Army Staff, in an interview said that a similar incursion cannot be repeated and that we can defeat Pakistan at any point of time.
We have not hesitated in crossing the line of control to take action against terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. We have also not hesitated in using air power. And Pakistan has now realized that if they are going to continue with this kind of proxy war, and in case our troops are going to suffer casualties, or there is going to be any kind of major damage to our infrastructure, these kind of actions will be repeated.
During India-Pakistan Kargil conflict, when the Indian Army was going through a tough phase, then the Sweden-made Bofors weapons came to the rescue of the Indian soldiers. On June 12th and 13th, the Indian Army had recaptured the Tolling Hills range from the Pakistani intruders. Pakistani intruders were targeting the Indian posts and logistic supplies by hiding behind the Tolling range. So winning there was a crucial moment for the Indian Army. They were trying to weaken the Indian Army by targeting more and more Jawans and also by attacking at the NH1 to take control. Bofors guns proved their mettle in the Kargil War by destroying the bunkers and bases built on the high-altitude mountains with ease and causing heavy damage to the Pakistan Army. Air Vice Marshal Dr. Arjun Subramaniam is the President's Chair of Excellence in National Security at NDC. He is a retired fighter pilot from IAF who has flown MiG-21s and Mirage 2000s. He has commanded a MiG-21 squadron and a large flying base and held several operational, staff and instructional assignments in the IAF. He is an air-powered doctrinal expert, having crafted the current IAF doctrine in 2012. He was awarded the Ati Vishist Seva Medal for Distinguished Service by the President of India in 2011. We have Air Vice Marshal talking about the challenges and the role of Air Force in the Kargil War.
The first Air Force involvement in Kargil was a Canberra photo reconnaissance egg on the 21st of May, around the 20th, 21st of May. Now that aircraft was shot at in Batalik, came back and landed in Srinagar with one engine damaged, and that indicated to the Air Force leadership that air operations are not going to be a cakewalk. There are surface-to-air missiles, and that it was essential that fighter aircraft carry out attacks on these positions before the army carries out its infantry assault. The first squadrons to get inducted into the Kargil sector were MiG-21 and MiG-27 squadrons. 108 Squadron from Adhampur, 17 Squadron from Batinda, and 51 Squadron from Srinagar were the MiG-21 squadron. And you had 9 and 221 Squadron of MiG-27s who were operating from Srinagar and Avantipur. The initial attacks by the Indian Air Force is blind. Blind का ये मतलब है कि targeting information नहीं थी, सही कोऑर्डिनेट्स नहीं थे. जो इंफॉर्मेशन आर्मी से आती थी वो थी कि ये 0.4875, 0.45140, their grid reference is so and so, and then the Air Force squadrons have to convert it into coordinates for targeting. कोई precision weapons उस समय नहीं थे, and they had to carry out rocket and gun attack. Initially पहले 2-3 दिन में 2 हवाई जहाज गिरे, एक MiG-27 और एक MiG-21 और एक हेलीकॉप्टर भी गिरा, and that forced the Indian Air Force to stop air operations for a while, reflect a little bit कि भाई सब ठीक हो रहा है or do we need to recalibrate air operations, and that is how the air operations progressed. उन दिनों में फिर क्या हुआ? Slowly more and more intelligence kept coming in from the army and from other agencies. For effective air operation, you need something that is called a targeting mosaic in order to attack the target properly.
What the Kargil conflict demonstrated, however, was the air power was relevant and could be potentially very effective even in the utterly demanding context of the mountain warfare at high altitudes. And the lesson learned, according to Air Vice Marshal Arjun Subramaniam?
As a military historian, it is my job to look at war and conflict from a detached perspective. And the primary aim of that is to take away lessons and offer perspectives for future generations so that the same mistakes are not made again, so that successes can be repeated. But at the same time, one also gets an opportunity to narrate stories of bravery and courage in a manner that a wide readership can absorb them. There are many layers of the Kargil conflict, but at the strategic level, India managed to evict intruders from their own territory by displaying a certain amount of strategic restraint and responsibility. But that came with a heavy price to pay.
In the Kargil War, the IAF rapidly adapted to the air campaign's unique operational challenges, which included enemy positions at elevation of 14,000 to 18,000 feet. A stark backdrop of rocks and snow that made for uncommonly difficult visual target acquisitions, and a restriction against crossing the line of control that forms the border with Pakistan. The Kargil War was fought for more than 60 days and ended with India regaining control of all the previously held territory. The victory of Tiger Hill was one of the crucial achievements in the 60-day-long conflict. Indian soldiers fought the Kargil War under the toughest conditions on difficult terrains at an altitude of 18,000 feet. The day marks the victory of Indian soldiers in recapturing the mountain heights that were occupied by the Pakistani army. To honor the fallen soldiers, entire nation held various events to pay tributes during the 23rd Kargil Vijay Diwas commemorations, to rekindle the pride and valor of the soldiers who took part in Operation Vijay.
This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
India has designated 5 new wetlands as wetlands of international importance, making a total of 54 Ramsar sites in the country. The Ramsar sites have been increased from 49 to 54 Ramsar sites. These include 3 wetlands, the Kargil Bird Sanctuary, Pallikaranai Marsh Reserve Forest and Pichavaram Mangrove in Tamil Nadu, Pala Wetland in Mizoram and Sakhya Sagar Wetland in Madhya Pradesh. The first ever global effort to address the concerns of children forced to flee their homes due to the climate crisis was taken on Monday. A set of guidelines backed by the UN were issued to protect, include and empower children who are forced to migrate because of climate change. A report.
The guidelines contain a set of 9 guiding principles that have been developed to safeguard the rights and well-being of children moving in the context of climate change. The principles adopts a rights-based approach calling for upholding the best interests of the child, ensuring family unity, non-discrimination and protection of nationality, among others. The new framework is not legally binding. However, they contain key principles of international law. The principles are to be used by local and national governments, international organizations and civil society groups working with children on the move in the context of climate change. The recommendations seek to safeguard the rights and well-being of children regardless of the location or migration status. Migrant children are particularly vulnerable when moving in the context of climate change. According to the UN, nearly 10 million children were displaced following weather-related shocks in 2020 alone. Abhishek Mukhopadhyay for World News, AIR.
Bangladesh's largest private carrier, US Bangla Airlines, will be doubling its flights to Kolkata from the 4th of August. The airline announced on Tuesday that it will operate 2 flights daily from Dhaka to Kolkata in place of one being operated currently. Presently, US Bangla daily flights depart from Dhaka to Kolkata at 10:10 a.m. and take off from Kolkata at 11:30 a.m. for Dhaka. From August 4, the additional flight will take off from Dhaka to Kolkata at 6:30 p.m. every day and depart from Kolkata to Dhaka at 7:35 p.m. The number of people seeking visas for India has been going up substantially since the easing of travel restrictions subsequent to improvement in the COVID pandemic situation in both Bangladesh and India. Bangladesh sends the largest number of foreign tourists to India. Before the onset of the pandemic in 2020, the Indian High Commission in Bangladesh issued over 16 lakh visas for Bangladeshi nationals in the year 2019. Azerbaijan Airlines has announced the start of direct flights between Baku and Delhi twice a week, effective from the 9th of August. First Secretary of the Indian Embassy, Vinay Kumar, speaking at an online B2B meeting of companies, said that it will reduce the travel time between Baku and Delhi to just over 4 hours. He noted that the Indian travel and tourism industry is a very important sector for India. He also noted that India and Azerbaijan enjoy warm and friendly relations based on historical and cultural ties. The Embassy of India in Baku organized a state tourism promotion event as part of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav on Tuesday in a hybrid mode.
The Government of India has amended the Foreign Contribution Regulation Rules 2022 to reduce the compliance burden on citizens. The Ministry of Home Affairs in a press release today said, as per the amended rule, any person receiving foreign contribution more than 10 lakh or 1 million rupees in a financial year from relatives has to intimate to the central government within 3 months of receipt. Earlier, such monetary threshold limit was 1 lakh rupees and intimation to central government was required within 30 days. And now a report from the business world.
The Sensex plunged 498 points or 0.89% to finish at 55,268. The Nifty also declined 147 points or 0.88% to end at 16,484. At the global stock markets, Asian stocks were trading up except Japan's Nikkei 225, which fell 0.2%. Asian share markets added amid reports that China is planning to tackle a debt crisis in real estate sector. On the other hand, another likely U.S. interest rate hike kept the gains. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index rose 1.7% and China's Shanghai Composite Index gained 0.8%. South Korea's Kospi rose 0.4% and Singapore's Straits Times ended 0.4% up. European shares were trading mixed in intraday trade. Oil prices rose around 2%. In intraday trade, Brent crude was trading at $106.30 per barrel, while WTI crude prices were at $98.60 per barrel. And in the forex market, the rupee weakened 3 paise against the US dollar. The rupee closed at 79 rupees and 77 paise against the American currency. Gaurang Dhawan Lal for World News, All India Radio.
On to sports now. Star Indian javelin thrower Neeraj Chopra will not be taking part in the Commonwealth Games 2022 in Birmingham due to an injury. Secretary General of the Indian Olympic Association, Rajiv Mehta, told the media that Neeraj Chopra will not be able to take part in the Commonwealth Games as he got injured in the finals of the World Athletic Championships. Chopra has delivered a lot of outstanding performances since he won the gold in Tokyo Olympics 2020.
Listen to Commonwealth Games quiz with AIR News Sportscan at 7:20 p.m. every day. All you have to do is reply to a question on the Commonwealth Games. Email your answers at airsportscan@gmail.com. The first correct answer will be selected as the winner and rewarded with a jersey of the Indian Commonwealth Games team. So keep cheering to India, listening to Sportscan at 7:20 p.m. on FM Gold 100.1 MHz and on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official.
In cricket, India will take on the West Indies in the third and final ODI at Queen's Park Oval in Port of Spain on Wednesday. The match will begin at 7 p.m. Indian time. After an amazing 64 runs off 34 balls by Akshar Patel in the last match, India lead the three-match ODI series by 2-0. Shikhar Dhawan-led side will now look to continue their form tomorrow with an aim to top up a world record-winning feat. India created a world record on Sunday by sealing their 12th consecutive series win in the ODI format against the West Indies, the most against a team.
Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Reuters reports Sri Lanka has asked China to help with trade, investment and tourism to help it grow sustainably. Colombo's envoy to Beijing said on Monday as it negotiates for an emergency $4 billion package to help it emerge from an economic meltdown. Global Times reports China's dwindling population will touch negative growth by 2025 and may continue to shrink for more than a century. NPR writes the rough treatment of bank protesters in China has cast a spotlight on an under-regulated corner of the banking system. The Dawn reports that Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said that Pakistan was keen to work with Shanghai Cooperation Organization's member countries to promote cooperation in various fields and meet its goals. Pakistan Observer writes that the Punjab Food Authority has stopped the production of a famous restaurant over multiple violations during a raid on Lahore Shekharpura GT Road on Monday. A quick look at the headlines once again. 2 Indian peacekeepers killed in the Democratic Republic of Congo. External Affairs Minister expresses grief. Russia decides to quit International Space Station after 2024. Kargil Vijay Diwas being celebrated across India. Government of India amends Foreign Contribution Regulations Rules 2022 bars any person receiving foreign contribution more than 1 million rupees in a financial year. India designates 5 new wetlands at Ramsar sites. Neeraj Chopra to miss the Commonwealth Games due to injury. And in cricket, India to take on West Indies in third and final ODI at Queen's Park Oval in Port of Spain on Wednesday. And now before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan by artists from the Philippines. With that, we end this bulletin.